welcomes you to this wonderful facility at the Sports Ministry to felicitate a team that has done Sri Lanka proud once again. They've achieved this title before, but this time it was an emphatic victory in Division 1 for Sri Lanka, and we welcome this champion team. It's a proud moment for Dialog, it's a proud moment for the SLRFU. Very good afternoon, ladies. Proud moment for this team, but it is a proud moment for the country as well. And as a result of that, I would ask you all please to rise to start with the national anthem. Welcome once again everybody to this felicitation ceremony, and just to mention how proud a moment this is for Dialog and the SLRFU, we're very happy also to have the players, friends and well-wishers and families here with us to celebrate this very proud moment where Sri Lanka won the Division 1 championship in the Asian Rugby Championship and are now ranked 4th in Asia. This is the highest ranking we have reached in 15-a-side rugby, and the Dialog have overseen quite tremendous progress in the history of 15-a-side rugby in Sri Lanka as well. Sri Lanka have done well in 2010 when they won the same competition. 2013 we won this at home, but to go away and beat Philippines in Manila in 2015 has got to be the crowning achievement so far. And it also goes well to say that Sri Lanka have now moved up 9 places. We are the highest moving country in the entire rugby playing world, moving up 9 places from 47 to 38 in the International Rugby Board rankings. And that is really something to be proud of. We are 38th, and that's the highest we have achieved in those rankings since 2003. So boys, you all have not done something small, you all have done something pretty big. And don't forget that we beat also Poland, who are ranked in the 20s not so long ago. So the 20s are within our grasp, and that's something that we should be aspiring to. Something to aspire to also, qualification for the Sevens in Rio in 2016, and of course the 2nd place qualifier in Japan in 2019. Those are the targets that all of us have in mind, and that's what Dialog would love to see their sponsored teams achieve. Dialog have been at the forefront of rugby for several years now. Since 2012, they've had an association with the national team. They will be sponsoring the national team this year as well, and they will be hoping to see Sri Lanka do well in Borneo, in the Philippines, which has already happened. Then the Shanghai Sevens upcoming in September, the Bangkok Sevens, and also the Colombo Sevens in October, the Women's Championship also, and of course the Dialog Rugby League and Clifford Cup, which we all look forward to, all done with the patronage of Dialog. But this has been a superb achievement for the country. And I know the Honourable Sports Minister who is here with us today, Mr. Navin Dissanayake, was hanging his hat on the World Cup cricket team doing well, also sponsored by Dialog, but this team has done one even better. We're very happy to have the Honourable Minister with us today. In addition to several other dignitaries, apart from the players and their families, we have Mr. Asanga Seniviratne, President of the Sri Lanka Rugby Football Union, Dr. Hans Vijayasuriya, Group Chief Executive of Dialog Asiata, Ms. Amali Nanayakara, Group Chief Marketing Officer, Mr. Lasitha Gunaratne, the Vice President of the SLRFU, and several other high-ranking officials of the SLRFU, and of course Fazil representing the team that did so well. And it is now my great pleasure to call upon the Honourable Minister of Sports and Tourism, Mr. Navin Dissanayake, to address the gathering.
Mr. Hans Vijayasuriya, Chief Executive Officer of Dialog, Mr. Asanga Seniviratne, Chairman of Sri Lanka Rugby Union, also fellow distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I see a lot of faces that we know very well, and of course our heroic rugby union team, the boys who represent us. Really appreciate your presence here today. Also I see the secretary, my old friend, my batchmate, Mr. Lasitha Gunaratne also. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. It's a great honor for me to be here today as the Sports Minister, because these boys have brought us great honor, and they have, through their heroic activities, mainly in the sports field, they have brought great honor to our country. Therefore, I am very thankful for Dialog for sponsoring the team and sticking with the principle of following through and believing in the boys to perform. So once again, a big thank you for Hans and his team and Dialog, the brand Dialog has been doing so much for sports in Sri Lanka. And I really appreciate your efforts, and the sports loving public of this country, especially the rugby loving public of this country, I'm sure deeply appreciate and have immense gratitude to the company that is doing this great sponsorship for us. Also, of course, I have to make it very clear that the performance of the boys on the field is definitely motivated and inspired by the administrators. Therefore, I would like to thank Asanga and the office bearers of Sri Lanka Rugby Union for giving the necessary leadership and the motivation for these boys, and also the game of rugby to continue and prosper in this country. I understand we are now 38 in the world, so that is a huge achievement, and 4th in Asia. So given the fact that a lot of resources have gone into rugby, and also it's very clear that we have the talent for rugby in Sri Lanka, that these boys who I met and spoke to before they left, I'm very grateful to you for continuing to fly the flag of Sri Lanka. And the government of President Maithripala Sirisena and Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe will undoubtedly do its maximum for the game of rugby in the future. Therefore, in the fear of development of the sport, I would urge all of you to continue to play the game in the spirit that it should be played. And the game of rugby, I personally feel, can go much further than this event can portray, because as you know, the game of rugby is very popular in the schools and also the various districts that it has. We must make sure that the game goes to the villages, and I think that effort has to be emphasized, because like cricket, these boys of course have immense talent, but we must ensure that talented rugby players can come to the team. Therefore, in that spirit, I thank the selectors for giving us a very good team and selecting independently. That's very important. I feel the governance structures of all associations must be independent. We in the sports ministry, it is not true, we do not want to interfere at all in the governance and the principles and the decision making in any sports association. But of course, under the sports law, there are certain associations that come under us. So we have the supervisory function of all these sports. So therefore, it should not be misconstrued that we are trying to interfere. As far as certain controversial decisions are concerned, I suppose all of us are gentlemen. We should be able to talk and decide on these matters for the benefit of the sport. Anyway, there is a different matter. නමුත් මම පැහැදිලිව ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න කැමති අපගේ මේ රග්බි ක්‍රීඩකයන් ඉතාමත් ගෞරවනීය අවස්ථාවක් අපේ රටට ලබා දීලා තිබෙනවා. මම මෙම සහෝදරයන්ට මාගේ ස්තුතිය රජය වෙනුවෙන් ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න කැමතියි. ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම අපිට වඩා මේ දරුවන් තමයි අපේ රටට මේ විශාල ගෞරවය ලබා දීලා තිබෙන්නේ. එම නිසා නැවතත් මේ මල්ලිලාට මාගේ වර්ධාංගම ස්තුතිය ක්‍රීඩා ඇමතිවරයා වශයෙන් ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න කැමතියි. මේ මල්ලිලා මට හම්බුණා, මට අවස්ථාවක් ලැබුණා ඒගොල්ලන්ට කතා කරන්න පිටරට යන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා, මේ ගෞරවය ලබා ගන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා. එතකොට අපගේ තජුඩීන් නායකතුමා අපිට මට ප්‍රකාශ කරා ඒ වචන ටික මට හොඳට මතකයි. අපිට චැලෙන්ජ් එකක් හැටියට තියෙන ෆිලිපීන්ස් විතරයි කියලා මට කිව්වා. ඒ විශ්වාසය අනුව තමයි ගිහිල්ලා මේ ක්‍රීඩකයෝ ටික මේ ගෞරවය අපිට ගෙනාවේ. ඉතින් මම ඒකට ස්තුතිවන්ත වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම අපගේ මෙම කණ්ඩායමට ඒ ගෞරවය ලබා දීමට විශාල දායකත්වයක් ලබා දුන්න අපගේ සවුත් ඇෆ්‍රිකන් කෝච් අද මෙතන නැහැ. නමුත් එතුමාවත් මේ අවස්ථාවේ මතක් කරන්න කැමතියි. ඒ වගේම මෙම අනුග්‍රහය ලබා දෙන අපගේ මේ රග්බි ක්‍රීඩාවට මේ අනුග්‍රහය ලබා දෙන ඩයලොග් සමාගමට මාගේ හෘදයාංගම ස්තුතිය හා ගෞරවය මේ අවස්ථාවේ ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න කැමතියි. මොකද මේ සමාගම රග්බි ක්‍රීඩාව ගැන හා අපගේ රග්බි ක්‍රීඩකයන් ගැන විශ්වාසයක් තිබ්බා. ඒ විශ්වාසය අද මල්පල වෙලා තිබෙනවා. ඉතින් මම නැවතත් ඒ සියලු දෙනාටම මාගේ ස්තුතිය ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න කැමතියි. ස්තුතිය වලට වඩා ප්‍රතිපත්තියක් වශයෙන් මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේන මැතිතුමත් රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ අගමැතිතුමත් සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම මේ රගර් ක්‍රීඩාවට අවශ්‍ය සියලුම පහසුකම් හා සම්පත් ලබා දෙන බව පැහැදිලිව ප්‍රකාශ කරමින් නැවතත් සියලු දෙනාටම විශේෂයෙන්ම අපගේ රගර් ක්‍රීඩකයන්ට මාගේ ආදරණීය ගෞරව ස්තුතිය ප්‍රකාශ කරමින් ඕගොල්ලන්ට සුබ පතමින් මා නිහඬ වෙනවා. බොහොම ස්තුතියි.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister of Sports, Mr. Navin Disanayake. I'm sure that the rugby administration and the players will give you no cause for concern or to exercise your supervisory jurisdiction because the game is going in the right direction, and I think that is something that all Sri Lankan rugby fans are very happy about. Now it's time for us to see what Fazil and his team brought back to Sri Lanka from Manila, and for the trophy presentation I would like very much to invite back on stage the Honourable Minister Mr. Navin Disanayake to be accompanied by the President of the SLRFU Mr. Asanga Senimiratne, and also the group Chief Executive of the sponsors Dialog Asiata Dr. Hans Vijay Surya, and also Ms. Amali Nanayakara, who has been at the forefront of this sponsorship, the Group Chief Marketing Officer of Dialog, and also Mr. Lasitha Gunaratne, the Vice President of the SLRFU, who has worked so tirelessly to bring this trophy back to Sri Lanka.
Honourable Minister for Sport, Namin Disanayaka, the Chief Executive of Dialog SLRFU, Hans Vijay Surya, the Patron of Sri Lanka Rugby, Malik Samaravikrama, the Chief Marketing Officer for Dialog SLRFU, Hamri Nanakara, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not just happy to be standing here today, but really proud of what we've achieved. Playing rugby as a sport is not just coming out there and enjoying a day out. It's actually putting your body in line and actually putting your life on line today. When you take professional sport, rugby is probably one of the hardest sports around at the moment. And for Sri Lanka to have done what it has in the last 5 years, it's very creditable, and I know the boys have sacrificed much, and all credit should go to the boys who've done such an excellent job. Firstly, I would like to thank my captain, Fazil Marija. In my opinion, probably the finest fly half that Sri Lanka has ever had. He's done a wonderful job for Sri Lanka in the last few, in the time that he represents Sri Lanka. I've known him since his young days at Kingswood, and I remember him as a schoolboy. And none other than George Simpkin, the great All Black selector, found Fazil and gave him his first break. And in rugby circles, if Malik Samaravikrama identifies you as a good player, you can rest be assured that that player is going to be good. And I know Fazil was handpicked by George and Malik at a very young age, and he's come through so very well, and Sri Lanka can really be proud of him, not just as a player but as a leader. So well done, Fazil, and the rest of the boys. This team that embarked on this journey was a very young side. We had lost the services of nearly 9 of our senior players. So it's really creditable of what we have achieved. Sri Lanka doesn't usually go and win overseas against home teams, especially teams like Philippines and even Singapore, which we did in 2010. And the man who orchestrated all this and planned it and was behind the boys was none other than Johan Taylor. He served Sri Lanka rugby well. He's basically sacrificed nearly a decade of his life to serve Sri Lanka rugby. He's a coach of Kandy, and as you know, Kandy has been, probably the greatest side, the best team that has been in our rugby circles for nearly 15 years now. So it's a long period for any team to dominate. And if I'm not mistaken, they've won 13 out of the 15 last championships, which is an incredible achievement. And Johan has been in the middle of all that, and he served Sri Lanka rugby as well, and now we hope to contract him for a 4-year period to map out the strategy for Sri Lanka rugby, because we really have to map out our plan and go forward. We cannot just be turning up at these tournaments and trying to perform. It's not going to work anymore. Everyone's very, very serious about their rugby. So in order for us to challenge teams like Hong Kong, Korea and Japan, we really need to focus on our training and what we are going to do in the future. And with this we cannot do, Mr. Minister, without your support. Without government support, without the total support of the sports ministry, no sport can thrive. No sport can go forward. And I know you since you were probably 5 years old, and we've known each other for a long time. And I know you will support us, and I know your heart is in the right place. And sport in this country needs someone like you to lead the way for us, because Sri Lanka still doesn't even have a scientific training center. So that is a deep need at the moment. Accommodation, training facilities, and our boys have done all this and achieved and come into the top 40 in world rugby. That is an incredible achievement. There are over 160 countries playing rugby today. So it's a fabulous achievement for a country like Sri Lanka with such a small population. Right? We've done all this with the bare basics and the minimum. My administration has tried its best to uplift rugby. We've taken sponsorship to a different level completely. And here I really have no words to thank my dear friend again from school days, Hans Vijay Surya and his team, for changing the face of sport in Sri Lanka, not just rugby. Dialog has come forward at a time when very few corporates have even looked at sport. Usually for corporates in Sri Lanka to sponsor sport, it has to be their whole school or their whole club or a friend. But Dialog hasn't looked at any of it in that manner. And they've given sponsorship packages that can actually be of use. You know, it's not just to have a tournament or run a camp or something like that. No, it is to help the administration and also to build the national team and to focus on developing rugby. We have over 100 schools playing rugby today, and I would say 100% of the national team, I would go on to say 100%, because even the boys who have come from the Colombo schools have actually started their rugby outside. There's a fantastic program in rugby in development where scouts go out and bring these boys into schools in Colombo and they develop. And I wouldn't go into detail, but all these stories, including the story of our most valuable player of the tournament, Danushka Ranjan, is a story like that. So rugby is on the right footing, and people like YC Cheng, Malik Samaravikrama, Gamini Fernando, they work tirelessly and selflessly to take rugby to where it is today. Once again, I would like to thank another person from Dialog, and it's a lady. Actually, it's amazing. A lady in corporate Sri Lanka has changed the face of rugby, of sport in this country. Where are all the men? Where are all these guys? So, Amali, I know from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all what you've done. You've never said no to us. You've supported us wholeheartedly. And she's also a Candy supporter. So, Malik, you should have a chat to her soon. So, she loves her rugby. And thank you, Amali. Without you and your team, Harsha, I'm not going to say much about you because I've already said a lot about Dialog. Thank you, Harsha, for everything what you've done and for supporting us. So, on behalf of Sri Lanka Rugby, once again, I thank you all for being here and supporting us right throughout. We are not going to play for the third place playoff for one reason. We played Hong Kong many times. We don't need to play them. We don't need to try to beat them at this moment. I think what's important is to give our boys more exposure. So we are planning to do our first ever European tour. We want to play 2 countries, namely Portugal and Switzerland. If we do not get fixtures against those 2, we will look at Germany and probably Spain. Now all these countries are in the top 20, between 20 and 30. So if we can, create an upset, we can really move up. If we don't, we'll get the exposure. Our boys will get the exposure, play against bigger, better players, and something different. And next year we'll be invited to Hong Kong to train with the Waikato Chiefs and Hong Kong for a 2-week period and play 2 matches in April. That will be just before our A5s, and then we can go on to contest for the 3rd place. So that's our long-term plan. And as I said, we want Johan Taylor to map out the 4-year plan and also bring in Sean Manikasekara, who's done an excellent job. Thanks, Sean, for your hard work and training. I have to mention Sean's name. He's also captain Sri Lanka and been a tower of strength to us. He really managed to bring this team together. And also our manager, Mr. Nanek Kar. Wonderful job, and thank you for all your hard work. Also, as the Honorable Minister stated, the selectors, we are fortunate to have 5 legends as selectors, absolute legends. The chairman, changed the face of rugby in the 70s. Rohan Abekon and Arnondo Lagetra were probably 2 of the best players in their era, in their positions, and Sajid Malikara, she was an absolutely fantastic player. So we've had, and Chandana Deepji, also another national player. So we've had a fantastic set of selectors who've been at almost all the training sessions. I mean, that's a complete change to the past. So I thank you all for all the time you've spent and the effort you put in. Once again, thank you all for organizing this, Honorable Minister, and thank you all for coming and for the team on their performance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Asanga Sedivarathan, President of the Sri Lanka Rugby Football Union. I'm sure your vision will take Sri Lanka to much greater heights than have already been achieved, and hopefully that vision will be implemented unhindered. It looks like we have some interesting times in store, guys, because going to Europe playing some big teams there who play different styles of rugby will certainly be an educational experience for all of us. Our next speaker is a man that Asanga spoke quite fondly of in his speech, and we can't really say enough. He brought the Kingswood team to light in 2004. He completely dominated in that era at Kingswood. He had Gayan Veeraratna outside him, Pirina Manoj outside him, and it was just one of those unstoppable all-time teams. Since then, I tried to get Jehan Kanagaratna to get him into CRNFC. Jehan Kanagaratna never listens to me, so Malik got him instead. And Fazil Marija has become the best fly half that Sri Lanka has ever seen. Whether he's the best back Sri Lanka has ever seen, I think Michael Jayasekara can probably answer that question, and those who watched him can probably answer that question better. But Fazil, it is an absolute honor, and it's been a long-awaited captaincy for you, and we are very proud of you that you have managed to bring this trophy back in this tour that you have led. So to tell us your story in your own words, it's a great pleasure to invite the captain of Sri Lanka Rugby to the stage, ladies and gentlemen, Fazil Marija.
Good evening, Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank and congratulate all the Sri Lankan rugby fans, including Sports Minister Navin Disanayake, SLRFU President Asanga Senratna, and the Union, our manager Rohan Chintaka, and Coach Johan Taylor, and coaching staff for preparation ahead of the tournament. Excuse me, I was talking Sinhalese. Preparation for 3 weeks. We had like 3-4 sessions a day. It was really hard. Like first week, we boy kattiya gaya make karanda bad. We coach gila homari koda adu garumu meme gila. I said no. Api coach ape level eකට ගේන්නේ නැතුව අපි යන් එයාගේ level එකට එයා ඉසෑන අයර්ලන්ඩ් සවුත් ඇෆ්‍රිකා coach කරලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මං කිව්වේ අපි try එකක් දෙමු. අපි ඒක next level එකට යන්න අපි එයාගේ level එකට යන් කියලා. ඉතින් මම ඒක තමයි ඒගොල්ලන්ට කිව්වේ. ඉතින් අපි පළවෙනි week එක කොහොම හරි අමාරුවෙන් මේක කරලා ඉතින් second third week අපිට ලේසි වුණා. ඉතින් thank you මම කියන දේ අහලා කොහොම හරි ඒ සති දෙක තුන අපි එකට ගියා. ඊළඟට මම ඒත් එක්කම අපි 3 weeks වල අපි rehab centers වලට ගියා. ඒ වගේම අපි plant tree plant කරා. ඉතින් ඒක අපේ new experience එකක් අපි squad එකේ හැටියට අපි හිතනවා ඊළඟ අවුරුද්ද වලත් අපිට ඒකම කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා team එක වශයෙන්. දැන් ඒක මම special thanks කරන්න ඕනේ දෙන්නෙට first මහේල ජයවර්ධන ඇවිල්ලා අපිට motivation program එකක් කරා. ඉතින් ඒක මට coach මම players ලට සෑහෙන උදව් වුණා. එයාගේ ඒ කියන්නේ international level එකේ එයා කොහොමද motivate වුනේ, ඒ වගේම match එකට යන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා එයා කොහොමද prepare වුනේ. ඉතින් ඒ වගේ අපිට සෑහෙන දේවල් ගන්න දුන්නා. අපි match එකට ඉස්සෙල්ලා coach ඔක්කොම කතා කරේ එයා මොනවද කිව්වේ. ඉතින් ඒවා ඉතින් අපි ඒව අරගෙන තමයි මේ match වලට ඔක්කොම ගියේ. අනිත් එක මම thanks කරන්න කැමතියි sports minister ඇවිල්ලා මම හිතන්නේ එයාගේ time එක අපිට දීලා අපි ගැන විශ්වාසයක් තිබ්බා. ඒ නිසා තමයි මම හිතන්නේ ආවේ ඇවිල්ලා කතා කරේ මුළු team එකටම. ඉතින් thank you and මම players ගැන කතා කරනවා නම් සති 3ක් මාන විදිහට මාන්සි වුණා. ඒ වගේම players ලගේ අම්මලාට thanks කරනවා. අපි සමහර උදේ 7ට එනවා ඇවිල්ලා 9ට යනවා. girlfriends ලට wife ලට ඔක්කොම thanks කරනවා. සමහර සති 3 අමාරු වෙන්නදී බැනුම් ආගෙන කොහොම හරි මම දන්නවා අපිට ප්‍රශ්න තිබුණා. Thank you parents, girlfriend, wife and අනිත් එක මගේ experience එක ගැන කියනවා නම් මම 2003 ඉඳන් මම ශ්‍රී ලංකාව represent කරේ. ඒතර මට අවුරුදු 17යි. කිව්වා වගේ ජෝසින් කින් තමයි ඇවිල්ලා මට ඇවිල්ලා trial match එකක් ගන්න ගියා. ඉතින් මම ඇවිල්ලා ගැහුවා. ඒ වෙලාවේ ඉතින් මම ඒවා try දෙකක් තිබ්බා. ඒතර මගේ cousin තමයි ඇවිල්ලා fly off ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ. ඉතින් මම එදා match එක ගෙවුවට පස්සේ එයා ආයෙ fly off ගෙවුවේ නෑ. එයා එම්ම retire වුණා. ඉතින් අනිත් එක මම හිතන්නේ ඒ දවසයි මේ දවසයි අතර වෙනස මම හිතන්නේ ඉස්සර මම start කරද්දී players ලා දෙන්නෙක් තුන්දෙනෙක්ගෙන් තමයි depend උනේ team එක. ඉතින් මම ඒ දැන් බලනවා නම් එහෙම නෑ මුළු ස්ක්වොඩ් එකම හොඳ අපිට සමහරට ටීම් එක බැරුණා සිලෙක්ට් කරගන්න කවුද වින් 3 ගහන්නේ කවුද ෆුල් බැක් ගහන්නේ කියලා. ඒ වගේ කම්පිටිෂන් එකක් තියෙනවා දැන් ඒක හොඳයි ඉස්සරහ රග්බි වල. ඉතින් මම හිතනවා ශ්‍රී ලංකා රග්බි හොඳ ඉස්සරහට හොඳට මෙහෙම කියලා. මුත් එක මම හිතනවා අපි ඉස්සරහට තව මේක ෆස්ට් ස්ටෙප් එක හැටියට අරගෙන අපි ඉස්සරහට මම දැන් යුරෝපියන් ටුවර්ස් අසංග කිව්වා වගේ ටුවර්ස් උයි අපිට ට්‍රේනින් දෙන්න පුළුවන් නම් කොහේ හරි නිව්සීලන්ත සවුත් ඇෆ්‍රිකා ගිහිල්ලා අපිට ට්‍රේනින් ගන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඒක ලොකු දෙයක්. මම මාස 3ක් රෝෂාන් එක්ක ගියා නිව්සීලන්ත. එතන ඩිෆරන්ට් ලෙවල් එකක්. සමහරවිට අපි දෙන්නට තව මාස දෙකක් විතර ITM කප් ගන්න තිබා අපිට ටැලන්ට් එක තියෙනවා. ඉතින් අපිට එක්ස්පෝස් එක දෙන්න පුළුවන් නම් අපි තමයි හොඳ ප්ලේයර්ස්ලා ටිකක් මෙතන ඉන්නවා. අපිට ඉස්සරහට ඊට වැඩිය කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. මේකයි මම හිතන්නේ මිනිස්ට්‍රි එකෙන් අපිට සපෝට් එකක් යුනියන් එක ප්ලේයර්ස් ලොක්කෝ එකට වැඩ කරන්න අපිට මේක කරන්න පුළුවන් ඊට වැඩිය. and මම හිතනවා අපිට ඒෂියාවේ මේ ඉන්නවට වැඩිය තව යන්න පුළුවන් එක දෙක වගේ වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් කොහොම සපෝට් එක දුන්න අනිත් එක අන්තිමට මම කියන්නේ කැමති ස්පොන්සර්ස්ලා ඩයලොග් thank you යුනියන් ස්පොන්සර් කරාට ඒ වගේම රිබෝන් අපේ t-shirts sponsor කරාට ඉතින් thank you very much and well played Tuskers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fazil. It says a lot about not just the skill of a player, but the character of a player when he's respected not only by his teammates but by his opponents as well. And there are several players on this team who several foreign coaches have said have the ability to make it to a Super 15 team. So hopefully, Mr. Minister, you will be able to give the resources to these boys that will recognize their talent and take them to the highest level. I would like now to invite on stage the following dignitaries to give away the plaques, the medals, and the 75,000 rupee win bonus that SLRFU is giving to the boys for bringing back this title to Sri Lanka. And to give away the plaques and medals, I'd like to call upon the Honourable Sports Minister, Mr. Asanga Seniviratna, Dr. Hans Vijaysurya, Ms. Amali Nanayatkara, and Mr. Lasita Gunaratna, please to give away the plaques, medals, and also the, firstly, leading the squad, ladies and gentlemen, scored a fabulous try in the Philippines game and played a brilliant tournament all around, the captain, Fazil Marija. One of the senior men in the side puts his shoulder to the wheel, Terence Henry. Rode this time around, but Shehan Dimitri did a fabulous job in that position as well. Ganuka Disanayaka. Another veteran of the front row, a guy that everyone loves to have around and who did a fabulous job this tour as well, Achala Pereira. Another newcomer, played really well for the Navy team, is a cricketer and rugby player for Wesley, Dulanjan Vijayasinghe. Another gentleman playing in an unfamiliar position but being brilliant in the line-out and in defence, Soiru Anthony. He got only one yellow card this entire tournament. We are very happy about that. Sharo Fernando. Former Trinity captain and a man who has been brilliant in the line-out all season and making his first couple of tours for Sri Lanka, Randika Alves. And also another man who's playing his first season of club rugby. He's playing in a position he has never played in before, but started at number 8 for Sri Lanka, Buaneka Udangamur. Hard as nails, one of the most talented players we have at the moment, Yakadea Roshan Veeraratna. And trying to beat him to that number 9 jersey. Is he the best of the brothers? We won't know yet. Kavindu Di Costa. Also scoring a try and putting over a penalty on debut, a man that has led Havelocks from the front, Dulaj Pereira. And probably the most valuable player of the tournament for Sri Lanka, scored a few tries and also made some crunching tackles, Danushka Ranjan. Joining him in the centres, also playing in an unfamiliar position but still doing well with defence, Kanchana Ramanayaka scored a try in the final game as well. Next man came on in the Philippines game on the right wing and he scores tries very hard for the Navy, Dinusha Chaturanga. This man didn't get a lot of the ball, but when he gets it, he makes sure it gets dotted down behind the try line, Sadun Hera. He's not the biggest guy on the team, but he's got the biggest boot in the country, Riza Mubarak. Also, after a great season for Kandy this year, we are seeing a new face in the Sri Lanka jersey, Shashika Jayawardena. The next face is far from a new one. One of the most experienced forwards in Sri Lanka brought the pack together to play brilliantly when he was needed and fitted into an unfamiliar position and did what was needed for the team. We will say goodbye and we will miss you, Sean Vijayasinghe. Another man who did battle up front, Kishore Jahan. And the man who also scored the first try of the tournament for Sri Lanka, Labanga Pereira. And now to the officials who do so much to keep this team fed, to keep this team clothed and to make sure they don't miss their flights, Rohan Nana Chintaka. And the physios who do so much to keep them injury-free, Amit Jayasekaran. And Johan Taylor's assistant coach, Rajiv Pereira. And our second physio of the lot, our final medal recipient today, Priyankara Buddhika. Unfortunately, we don't have Johan Taylor with us here today, but a round of applause for the coach as well, gentlemen. That's the presentation of the medals, the plaques from Dialog, and also the 75,000 rupee cash bonus for winning the tournament presented by the Sri Lanka Rugby Football Union. Thank you very much. we've taken the first step, and as Fazil said, this is not the end of the journey, this is merely the beginning, and hopefully now that the Honourable Minister has pledged the government's support to rugby, and Asanga Seniratna seems to have a plan that the team is going to embark on. It's up to the boys to make sure that dream is realized. It's your dream, not just our dream and a country's dream, but it's your dream as well. Thank you once again, and on behalf of Dialog, thanks once again for coming. Refreshments are served outside. Congratulations and all the best for the future tours.